the time frames. Why do you think they get there and stick there? Yeah, and it's hard. That's a very I don't know about all the languages in the whole world. I think Chinese might be kind of easy that way. I think Chinese you go like yesterday and then you just start talking. That sounds kind of nice. But in Spanish and French and maybe even German and English, oh my gosh, don't even get me started with the English tense. If we don't start exposing them to narration and description in the past, like early on, all these teachers wait till the second year. Well, if they only got like a couple of months of exposure to these like very complicated moving parts, then how are they supposed to get out of intermediate bids?
Today we have a special guest in my YouTube channel, Señor Blue Mel, Tina Hargaden. I'm so excited you are here today with us, and I know there's so many questions I want to ask you and so much stuff I want you to talk about. We have to condense this into around 20-minute interview, so it's gonna be condensed, but it's gonna be good.
I grew up in Georgia.
Okay.
And I moved to Oregon in 1999, so I've lived there for 20 years.
Have you visited any foreign countries? Like which ones?
Well, I have visited France, Canada, and France.
Twice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually have not spent a lot of time in any other countries. It's weird because I teach languages.
Yeah, and you should visit Colombia.
I want to.
And you should go to Barranquilla, Santa Marta, and Cartagena.
Okay. Why should I go
Well,
there?
Barranquilla is a really cool city. Cool people like Shakira.
Oh,
so
yeah.
If you ever got a carnival, just happy people.
Is she just like hanging out
that
there?
That would fit your personality.
Thanks. Is she just hanging out there on the street?
Yeah.
Shakira?
Oh, Shakira?
Yeah.
No, she lives in Barcelona.
Oh, that's too bad.
Favorite book?
Little Women.
Favorite sport?
Running.
Favorite food?
Ice cream.
Movie?
I don't know if I have a favorite movie.
Song?
Probably Good Times, Bad Times by Led Zeppelin.
Favorite place to visit?
Probably like my house, because I'm gone all the time.
Hey, that's a good place.
I like to go on vacation and go back to Oregon and go to my house.
Well, and now you are in?
St. Louis.
Yes. How long have you gonna be here?
I am gonna leave on Saturday and go to White Plains, New York, and then I'm going to Vermont because I'm gonna go to Alyssa McLean's Express Fluency Conference. This year it's in White River Junction, Vermont. It's a great conference. It's really great.
Favorite quote?
My high school senior quote was, "Life is playing a violin solo in public and learning the instrument as you go on."
I like that.
Me too. It's actually true.
Next question. When did you realize you wanted to work in education?
I think I always wanted to be a teacher. But then I think I really decided on like the first day of kindergarten.
Okay.
Because I walked into kindergarten and, I grew up in the country and I was the first kid in my family. So I was the oldest one. And I grew up way out in the country. So I didn't really have any friends or like know any other kids except for my little siblings. And so the first day that I actually went to a place that was like set up for kids and met other kids was the first day of kindergarten when I was 4 years old. And so I walked in there and I remember thinking, it's amazing they made this place like a special thing just for kids, like with all the things that kids love. And I was like, the chairs are little just for us. And all the crayons were like laying out there all perfect. And I was just like, this is amazing. And then I realized that there was these people that made this happen. And I thought, I just want to make that happen.
That's awesome. So you've been in the field of education for quite a few years now.
Since 2003.
2003, that's when you started teaching.
16 or 17 years. Mm-hmm.
So briefly tell us your journey from student teaching to where you are now.
Okay, so I student taught in 2003 or 4, and I student taught in language arts and social studies and French in high school. So language arts and social studies in middle school and French in high school. And I realized when I was student teaching in middle school that I really liked middle school. It's my favorite. And I was also a TA, like a teaching assistant at the university where I was getting my master's. And then after I graduated, I went to work in Gresham Barlow School District, and I taught 7th grade language arts, social studies, what was called humanities at the time. So I taught 7th grade language arts and social studies on the Pathfinder team for 9 years. And from time to time I would teach French. Like I went and begged my principal to let me teach French. I was teaching this other elective. And so I thought, if I'm teaching this other elective, it was like creative writing or something like that. And I was like, if I'm teaching this, I should be teaching French. Like there's no languages in any of the middle schools in Gresham. And I begged him and he said yes. So then I taught that for about 3 years. Sometimes I would teach 1 period, sometimes I would teach 2 periods. And then the recession happened. So around like 2010 or 11, I had to pick up some other subjects to make up for staffing losses, and so I lost French. And then I decided that I should learn Spanish. So I have actually, this is like my dirty secret, I suppose. You're the first to hear. So I've never actually been to a Spanish-speaking country, like ever. And so I learned all my Spanish just through like getting input from various sources. So I watched Destinos a bunch, and like a bunch. I'm kind of like an expert on Destinos. And I had a tutor through a company called Speak Shop. Her name was Rebecca. She lived in Guatemala. And we would talk like 3 to 5 times a week for like 2 years. I just talked to her all the time. And I also read a lot of, you know, the little novels like Pobre Ana and like Los Ojos de Carmen. So I read a bunch of those and talked to Rebecca and watched Destinos, and then I passed the test and became a Spanish teacher. And so then I got my dream job. This is a cool story. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was student teaching at Lincoln High School in Portland in 2003 and 4, I met a woman who worked up the hill from Lincoln at West Sylvan, where I worked as a French and Spanish teacher for 3 years between 2015 and 2018. And so I met this woman, her name was Robin, and we were just having this meeting, and I was just a student teacher. And so we were going around introducing ourselves, and she said, my name's Robin, and I work at West Sylvan Middle School, and I teach Spanish and French. I didn't know that there was any jobs that were teaching 2 languages, and I thought that sounded really cool. I guess I was just super naive. I thought everybody only just had 1 language. So I thought to myself, wow, because I said I'd already taught at the middle school, and I knew I liked middle school better. So I thought, whoa, a middle school teaching job and teaching 2 languages, that sounds like a dream job. And I thought to myself, she looks like she's getting older. And she's probably gonna retire soon, and I wanna apply and get her job when she retires. I just remember thinking that at this meeting, like that's a really cool job. Maybe I could get her job later. And then I did. 12 years later, I got that job.
12 years later.
Yeah.
Very patient and determined.
It wasn't like I was like hounding the school or anything.
Yeah.
It just happened to open up the year I got that Spanish endorsement. So I did all that work and like did all that learning of Spanish. And then just the year that I got that endorsement, like 2 weeks later, after I got the paper in the mail from the Teacher Standards and Practices Committee, like this job opens up, and I applied for it and I got it. I really just made that job like up in my mind that it was my dream job, and then I got it.
You are here in St. Louis conducting your summer institute that is called Basic Interpersonal Communication Skills of the World Language Proficiency Project by Tina Hargaden. And I'm also taking it with a group of teachers from our district, but there's also many school districts who are sending their teachers here to learn from you. Could you tell us about this?
Well, actually, I am not teaching currently. So I got so busy because I had written a book with Ben Slavic called A Natural Approach to the Year. And when we were writing the book, we were thinking that nobody would actually want to read this book because it was like our vision for teaching languages. But apparently a lot of people have read it and like it. So it got to be got to where it had sold a lot of copies, and people started asking me to come and do more and more work with districts and like just speaking engagements and making workshops happen all over the place. And so it got really hard for me to have to keep turning down that work because I really wanted to do that. Like, I love teaching. It was really hard to leave teaching, but I really love teaching teachers. And so I'm not gonna teach next year. Last year I was on a half-time leave of absence, so I was working every other day at a high school. So I left my dream job. That was kind of sad. I didn't really want to leave it, but c'est la vie, right? And then I went and worked half-time at a high school, and the high school was like every other day. So I was able to do some traveling, but then also have a job in the school. But I just can't do all that anymore. It's a lot of work. So I'm really happy in a way, but in another way I'm sad to leave teaching for a while. But maybe I'll go back to it one day.
This manual here that we are learning about this week, this is my 4th day learning with you on the basic interpersonal communication skills in the World Language Proficiency Project. What is it about? Tell us.
I love this training. This is like, I've worked so hard and so long to make this training what I hope is very comprehensive and give people a plan to change their teaching over to a more proficiency-based approach. That's why it's called the World Language Proficiency Project. And so what we're doing this week is people in the morning are getting modeled teaching, like they're going through a class as if they're a student. And we've tried really hard to get teachers of less commonly taught languages. So we've had Latin and Scots Gaelic and Portuguese and Cherokee, because we didn't really want to have Spanish. So many teachers are Spanish teachers. And so I brought in all these teachers of less common languages so people could get the experience of being a brand new teacher or a brand new student.
And it's working because I'm learning Cherokee.
That's awesome.
And it's challenging, you know, now it's like I understand a little more about what my students are going through, so.
I'm so glad. So that was the point of bringing in the less commonly taught languages for the basic interpersonal communication skills. Because this is for beginner students who are just learning those basic interpersonal skills. And so we're also doing the CALP track, and they're taking classes for cognitive language academic proficiency. So like building more of like content-based instruction after students have had like a year and a half or 2 years of instruction on the basic interpersonal communication skills, to help them move into studying like AP themes and IB themes and just nonfiction in general. So things like history, social studies, science, and things like that, and cultural comparisons. So I'm really happy about having 2 different tracks for teachers who are working with beginner students, and then also teachers who are working with students who have a really good solid foundation in their basic interpersonal communication skills and are ready to move on and like use the language to learn about cultural topics and historical content topics.
So as world language teachers, we know that there's a lot of curriculums and a lot of programs out there that claim to be the best in teaching proficiency. What makes this stand out?
Well, there are a lot of really good programs for teaching with comprehensible input. I think it would depend on your goals. So there are programs that have everything ready for you to use. So all the materials are laid out for you and they tell you the topics and the units that you're going to teach. And some people want that. They want to have a program that's all ready to go. But I think what makes this different is that I based it on my training as a language arts teacher, and my training was in reading and writing workshop. And so what to me was so compelling about reading and writing workshop was that they gave you direction, and they gave you like academic goals and language goals for your students, but the topics and the stories and what you were creating as a class was very unique to every different class. And I used that type of curriculum for 9 years. And so I saw a lot of classes of students come through that program, and I realized that even though the tracks and the cycles or the units didn't change every year, like every year was a new experience for me, because it was a different set of people, and I had new stories to tell, and they had, of course, you know, their lives to tell about. And so I really liked that, like having a structure and then also having the freedom to bring the topics and themes and stories that I wanted to share with my students. And so anybody who wants to be able to build a lot of community and share a lot of unique experiences with their students, but also have like standards aligned literacy and language goals to work towards, I think this is a really good program because it has a lot of community and creativity. It's very much aligned with standards, and it's very much aligned with like, oh, a direction to go and assessment tools to show you that you're getting there.
What are some of your favorite methods to teach a language?
I like to do things with my class that give them a chance to like kind of co-create something with me. So a very basic thing that I like to do with my class at the beginning of the year is talk about the calendar. So we did that in class today. And basically, it sounds boring, like talking about the calendar, but to use the calendar as a way to find out what's going on in their lives and then write about that as a class and do shared writing so that we're basically creating our own texts that we can use to learn the language from our texts. So it's almost like we're creating like our own textbook as the year goes on, and what's inside the textbook is stories about us and what we're interested in. So I love any kind of strategy that lets me create with my class. So I love doing calendar talk with them, but you can't do that every single day, so you gotta move on. I love making characters with them through the process that you made the turtle with.
Mm-hmm.
They're so cute and like super memorable because every class is different. They always come up with crazy creative ideas. And then like making stories out of their characters and writing those up and writing up descriptions of their characters. I love doing things like that. And then something that I've really found super successful with my students is to make a yearbook of like all the stories that we made throughout the year, with pictures of them and then like interviews of them by their peers. They like partner up and interview each other and make a little page in the yearbook. So I just really like to, and I think it comes from that language arts background where we were always creating our own stories together. I really like to like make something that we can actually hold on to capture our unique class personality and the cool people in it.
Who are some of the educators that you admire the most?
Well, I really, really love Lucy Calkins. Lucy is practically like my favorite educator in the whole entire world. I don't know her personally at all. I've seen her and I've talked to her just a tiny bit at her trainings, but she runs the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project in New York at Columbia University. And when I went to her summer institutes, I realized like how impactful it was to be a student in the mornings like we're doing here, and then have like teacher talk and have resources to take home in the afternoon. So I love Lucy. And it's not just because she runs a great training, it's because she has transformed so many schools and so many school districts, and she totally transformed my career as a language arts teacher. And so ever since I first started working with her materials, my first year of teaching, and went to her institutes like between my first year and second year of teaching, I've just known that she like hasn't just had an impact on me like that, she's had an impact on hundreds of thousands of teachers through her institutes in New York and her materials that she puts out, and through all the people that she's trained that now go out around the country and around the world and do like homegrown trainees and homegrown institutes in districts that have adopted her materials and her approach. So like the biggest influence on me as far as what I'm doing now is definitely Lucy Calkins. But I would say probably the biggest influence on me as a teacher, period, would be my mom, because she taught kindergarten and preschool when I was a kid, and she always at our house made it so much fun to learn stuff. She would take us to the library and get us whatever we wanted to read, and I just devoured books. This was in like 1980, so we didn't have any internet. It was super boring at my house. We lived way out in the country. Like I said, I was a nerd. I didn't have any friends, but it wasn't because I was a nerd. There was no kids around. We lived way out in the middle of nowhere. She would just like basically like make it like school for us at home. And so she really showed me that like it's just so much fun to learn new things.
What are your next projects?
I'm about to go to Alyssa McLean's conference in Vermont, Express Fluency. It's a great conference, but it happens every year, so if you missed it this year, you can come next year. It's usually the first week of August in Vermont. Then after that, I have a few workshops, and what I'm working on, like in the in-between times, is finishing up my book that I have already kind of released it. I released edition 0 of this book called Stepping Stones Beyond Year One. And I'm really proud of this book. It's really, really good. But I gotta finish that up. It's not quite finished yet, but a lot of people were asking, like, can you just go ahead and sell what you have? Because they wanted it for this school year and they wanted to start planning. So I'm finishing up probably the last 3 or 4 chapters of that. And then I'm working on a day-by-day curriculum. That'll be a 4-year-long curriculum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so every single day has like a very detailed lesson plan. And once again, it's like totally modeled off of the materials that Teachers College puts out. Because when I first started teaching with Lucy's materials, I would sit there with her book open on my lap as I was teaching and like read her sort of model lesson plan and just like try to transform it into sort of my own words. And but it was just every single day was right there. I knew exactly where I was going. I can't wait to get this done. But writing a day-by-day curriculum is a lot of work.
I bet.
Yeah, because every single day is about 12 to 15 pages. The font's pretty big because I remember me, like Lucy's font was kind of small and I would be kind of squinting at it like that. So I'm trying to make mine a little less complicated to read and a little bigger. Like the font is about, I think it's like 14-point font. Because I want people to be able to glance down at it and just teach out of it if they need to. And then I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this happen, but this would be my dream, would be to have audio that you can download, to have it in different languages.
Oh, wow.
If you could read the sample lesson and then on the way to school, like listen to it in the car in your language, you would be able to have sort of a reference guide as well as this remembrance of what it sounded like when you were listening to the sample lesson. And I think a lot of world language teachers who are making this transition away from the textbook and to a more proficiency-based approach, they have a hard time kind of conceptualizing what it's gonna look like. And so I really think having like a day-by-day lesson plan as well as audio memory of what it sounded like will give them a clear vision of where they're going. Because it's a big shift for a lot of teachers.
I like that. I'm excited about reading that. Before we end, what would you like to share with all educators who are watching?
Wow, what a question. So, I would say that we have kids in our classrooms. They derive their self-concept from how they feel in our classrooms. And if we give them things that make them feel successful, we're gonna make the future, which to me sometimes looks a little bleak, we're gonna make the future be full of confident people who can tackle the problems that we're gonna need them to tackle when we're like 80 years old, lying around hoping somebody will take care of us. And if we give them tasks that are too hard because like we are afraid that our colleagues are gonna judge us for not being rigorous enough, then we're beating down people as they're just getting ready to take their place in the world. So it's just such a shame to me to see us putting texts in front of our students that are too hard, not just in world language, in language arts, social studies, science, math, career education, all across their school day. Many students are getting the message through the text that we're giving them that they can't read and they can't do it. And I know that there are ways to make text comprehensible to kids. It's not always the easiest thing to do to find ways to make the text comprehensible, but it is worth the work. Even if you have to reduce the amount of text that you're putting in front of the kids, that's probably good too, because that frees you up to do some learning in other modalities. But then again, we don't want to not give them a chance to read. So we need to give them a chance to read things that they can read, and we need to give them tasks and things to do that they can succeed at to make them feel successful. Because more important than us looking good and looking like we're a tough teacher, or looking like we're a rigorous teacher, or looking like we're super professional, more important than any of that is making those kids feel good.
That was great. I love that. Thank you so much, Tina, for being here in my channel. And if you want to connect with Tina, at the end of this video, you will find some links where you can find her work, and you can access, contact her if you would like Tina to come to your school district and share her knowledge with you guys.
Yeah, thanks.